how to go from light bulb moment to business launch. And that's what we're going to be talking through. And what's really nice as well is that we've got Spencer on the call, and Spencer's really going to be talking a lot about and giving examples that are really going to colour a lot of the theory that we'll talk about today in relation to Future Builders, the company that he started or that he founded. So Spencer, do you want to do a bit of an introduction to yourself as well, a little bit more generally, and then I'll do one as well about myself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. So absolutely, as you can see, I'm an entrepreneur, which really means I like to make things, break things, fail a lot and keep trying. That's generally what I kind of consider to be an entrepreneur. But I also really do love to make things, and I try to help people get the best out of them, as Shuan said. I think, very brief history of my background. I started off as a teacher, which is actually in complete conflict to being an entrepreneur in many ways. Teaching is very good, of course, in structure, but I really wanted to kind of change things up and start to innovate around what I could do and what I could bring to other people's lives a bit more. So I'm really focused on helping people become the best that they can be, but very much focused on helping people, I guess, at the moment become entrepreneurs, or to come up with new ideas and new products and new businesses that they could start. So super excited to be here with you all as well.
And Spencer's got he's got his own YouTube channel now that I highly recommend you check out. Spencer Ayres on YouTube. I think that's where the best content's coming out. Super inspiring seeing all the stuff that he's coming up with there. And definitely connect and also myself on LinkedIn as well, or on Instagram. And yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm a business coach and innovation consultant. I work with lots of different companies, whether they're like just small starting out all the way up to much bigger companies as well. And I use lots of different tools, a lot of the ones that Shuan mentioned, like the business model canvas, value proposition canvas. I use a lot of lean startup methodology. The 6 thinking hats, one of my favorites. So yeah, I've really helped companies with this. And I also lecture at university, the University of Exeter, and do a little bit of work with Google as well on the side. And now Spencer and I are starting to do a lot more video work with clients as well. So we started doing some work with Samsung as well, helping them teach a lot of these tools like design thinking as well. So you're in safe hands, everyone. That's the headline for this. And if you'd like to, again, check out my own YouTube, Nick Kimmo on YouTube. I've got lots of videos about a lot of the topics that we'll be covering here today. So yeah, it'd be great to get connected. But we'd love to know who you are. So if you'd like to share in the chat box, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Where are you at right now? Like, are you starting a company? Have you started already? Where are you at with it? What's your business idea? Why don't you share as well? Because let's get connected. Share your links to social media. This is a great way that we can connect beyond just this webinar. And also, why don't you talk a little bit about your business idea? Because then we can help each other out. So I really recommend that you put your links in there as well, but just share a little bit about yourself. And I think that'd be really helpful for us to get a little bit more context for the answers and stuff, and the type of the content that we talk about in this session. But let's go through the plan for today, because what we want to do is walk you through really the process that both Spencer and myself, we go through when we are starting businesses ourselves, or when we're helping other people start their own businesses. And hopefully going through this process, it makes it look easy. It's like, oh, it's an 8-step process. Lovely. Tick, 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 tick. That's done. In reality, it's quite a messy process. I like to think of it almost like a bowl of spaghetti, where it's mixing up and it's going round and round and round. But we're going to give you the steps, and you're going to be moving between them all the time. But we'll, in this webinar, make it seem a bit more like it's a linear process. It's not linear. It's kind of spaghetti-like. So first of all, we're going to be talking about where to focus. Then we're going to be talking about, well, how do you create an audience as well? Because that's really important, being able to access an audience. And then we'll talk about, well, problems. You've got to start with a problem, and then you can generate solutions. Fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. I think we're going to be talking about a little bit as well. We're going to go through 2 of, I think, the most powerful business tools that have ever been created that I use all the time, which are both Strategizer tools. So I recommend you check Strategizer out as well, strategizer.com. Really, really good tools there. I recommend the books as well, The Invincible Company, Business Model Generation, Value Proposition Design, Testing Business Ideas. These books are incredible from Strategizer. So check those out, and we'll be talking about those tools a little bit and applying them to Future Builders, because this is what we did actually in 2019. So it's we're actually telling a story really in this session today. Then we'll talk about assumption mapping, because you've got when you're starting a business, you don't know if it's going to work. If you did, then like it wouldn't be very kind of, there wouldn't be much point in doing it, right? Because everyone else would be doing it. So there's a lot of unknowns. What we need to do is map out what those unknowns are, and try and understand what we need to test, because then that gets us on to the next phase, which is looking at what are the different tests that we can do to be able to work out if this idea is any good and what we need to iron out and change to improve it. And then I think something that we don't talk about enough in startups and business, particularly, yeah, basically startup business, is like, well, what is the plan? Let's make a little bit of a plan, okay? And, you know, it's good, you've got to, like, you know, move fast and break things, but you've also, I think it helps to have a little plan, which then can be adapted as you go along. And I want to talk about that a little bit at the end as well. So that's the process we're going to be going through. And what we're going to be doing is applying it like mainly to future builders, because I think it's really good when you can talk about a real life example. And that's why we're so lucky to have Spencer on this session today. So that's the plan. If that's all right, we're going to keep going. If you're happy, and you like that idea, please, or with what I've just suggested that we're going to do, can you type a yes in the chat box and say, yeah, sounds like a good plan, Nick, let's go for it. If not, let me know as well. So let's continue.
Nick, we got a yes. We got 2 yeses. It sounds like we're all good to go, mate. 3 yeses. Yeah, come on.
Excellent. I'm pleased to hear it. Well done. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Oh,
so
flying in now. Fantastic.
Brilliant. Spencer, do you want to go for it? Do you want to talk about the process, the where to focus part?
The first part of this is where to focus, is absolutely. And the amount of conversations that I have with people about this exact question. I really want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know where to focus. I don't know what I'm good at sometimes. I don't know what the opportunities are, and I don't know where to look. And so that's the thing that we want to drill into right now. Now, there is a concept called ikigai that some of you may be familiar with. It's essentially a Japanese concept, which really means your reason for being, your purpose in life, if you like. And what we've done here is almost simplified this idea. Even though it's a simple model, we've simplified it even further to kind of really enable people to focus on where it is that they should be, what the work that they should be doing. If we look at the left-hand side of this graphic here, doing what you love doing, focusing on an area that you really love, is so important. As I said when I introduced, I'm an entrepreneur, which means I fail and I pick myself back up again, and I design, I kind of carry on going. One of the things is with any entrepreneurial journey, it will be fraught with ups and downs, and it will be a long process. And if you're not doing something that you absolutely love, then the chances are that you could fall out of love with what it is and fall out of the motivation. And your motivation has to be really strong in you in order to be successful, in order to get that product launched, in order to get your first customers, and in order to grow from there. So you've got to be focusing on the things that you love doing. Now, I did a video, and I'll come to this in a minute, but one of the questions that I think is really interesting to ask yourself when you're thinking about where I should focus is, what did you love to do when you were a kid? Because the chances are that what you loved to do when you were 10 years old, you're probably still going to love in some way now. Now, I loved to make Lego. I love literally breaking things and trying to put them back together. I'd always have glue and sticky tape and all these kind of things, trying to put things together. And I kind of realized actually that I like to deconstruct things and I like to build things. And that's kind of a good mindset that helps people. It certainly helped me as a product designer, as a product builder. So focusing on what that thing was that you loved to do as a kid is a really good starting point. Now, on the other side, of course, any business that you want to succeed, that you want to be sustainable, that you want to make you money, has to solve a problem that people have. It has to be something that somebody needs. And therefore, if it is something that somebody needs, then this bottom box kind of gets, or bottom category kind of gets ticked off automatically as well, which is something that's going to make you money. As much as it would be amazing to go through life not having to make money, the fundamental point of a business is to be able to make money, and in order to give people value. That's how I see it, at least. And so focusing on what people need and what makes you money, really important part. So focus on the thing that you love doing. Think back in your history about the things that you loved to do when you were a kid, maybe. Find out what people really need, and we'll be giving some advice and tools on how to do that as well. But also, don't forget the money making side of it. If your business, if your product doesn't make any money, then unfortunately that's a route to failure.
And Spencer,
Nick, it looks like you're going to jump in. Yeah, please.
I want to jump in. I'm sorry. And it probably won't be the first and last time. It won't be the last time. It's the first, but won't be the last. I think it would really help if you share What were these three things for you when you started Future Builders?
Now that's a great question. I know that actually I've kind of got a Venn diagram of the things that I love, if you like. So it's a Venn diagram inside a Venn diagram, all a bit meta. But what I love to do is always focused around education. I was a teacher for 8 years before I went kind of into entrepreneurial and startup world. So it's got to be something around learning that, or helping people get better. So that's first thing. The first thing that has to be, I had to do something around design, creativity, innovation. Doing something new is really important to me. So I know that if I'm not doing something new, then I get very easily bored, distracted, and just kind of switched off from things. And I actually like to I guess the other angle of this is it's got to be something to do with technology. So my perfect thing that I love to do is working with technology, creating something new, creating new things around education and learning. So Future Builders as a concept, which we'll talk about in a few more minutes, was right on the money for all of those things.
Brilliant. And all of what the slides are going to talk about next is really looking at what other people need and what makes you money. So don't worry, we're going to go into a lot more detail on that. And as Spencer said, there's a great video that he made on this that you should check out. I think Spencer maybe put a link in the chat or something, and then you've got a bit more detail on that one as well. So now let's step on to the next process. I think now more than ever in 2020, it's really important for you to create an audience first. You need to dig your well before you're thirsty, because like waiting for customers, waiting for them to come to you is not a strategy. What you need to be doing is creating an audience, creating fans, and then you can find something that they'll want to buy from you, right? I think the old school model is, oh, I'm making teapots. I've got a teapot factory. Let's make loads of teapots and then let's go and try and sell them. I think in 2020, it's more like, no, why don't I talk about stuff that I love and that I'm passionate about, create channels, share that on social media, and then find out what my fans want and then create that product for them. So it's a different mindset. It's a different way of doing it. And the way that I think to think about it is a bit like this, that first you need to get people to know about you. People can't buy from you. If they don't know who you are, if they don't like you and they don't trust you. So they've got to know, like, and trust you. The best way to do that in 2020 is to create videos, I think, or other forms of content, whether it be podcasts or blogs, or just like content on Instagram or social media, anywhere. On LinkedIn, I think is like a great platform, or even TikTok now, right? And then you can talk about what you're passionate about. You don't try and sell hard. You just try and bring people value. And then if you bring them value, you're going to create fans. Yeah. And then from that, in the future, that's how you create money. Right. And this is the process that we go through, I think, now in the age of where we're at now, especially in 2020 with lockdown. This is how you can do it in your bedrooms. You can be making a lot of content. You can be sharing it, talking about stuff that you're passionate about, and then you could create a t-shirt and then make thousands of pounds just from selling t-shirts to your fans. You could do any number of things, right? So I think this is a really good model for us to go with. And so make videos about topics you're passionate about and that you want to get working. This is what I was speaking to. I studied a master's in 2012, and Jay Shetty's mentor. Jay Shetty's got billions of views on social media. If you know Jay Shetty, say yes in the chat box. So I was speaking to his mentor, and his mentor said to me, one piece of advice that I didn't want to hear. This was 2 years ago. He said to me, Jay Shetty made 1,000 videos in 3 years. That's what you need to do. Okay, because I was going to him asking him for some leads. I wanted to get some contacts. He was like, I'm not giving you any contacts. You've got to make your own videos. That's how you're going to do it. Okay. And so over the past few years of making a lot of videos, I haven't managed to get to the equivalent of 1,000 videos over 3 years, but already business opportunities have come to me and customers have come to me as a result of the videos that I've created. And so if you're sat there going, oh, I'm not the kind of person that could make videos, believe me, you can be. You don't get good at it and then you start making. No, you start making and then you get good at it. So make videos, because places like LinkedIn, the organic reach, if you post a video, people will see it. If you do it on Facebook, less so. But if you do it on LinkedIn, TikTok, these places, they're trying to grow their platform. The platforms are trying to grow. So if you post videos there about, and this is again about the topics that you're passionate about and that you think could make money, that's where the key thing is. That's what you want to do. And yeah, work comes to you. And Spencer's done another great video on here about that. So I recommend you check that one out to go into more detail on it. But we want to fly through this stuff. So we want to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So let's talk about, this is, Spencer, this is one of your favorite topics to talk about, problem identification. Should we go into this?
I love it. I genuinely love it. And the reason I love it is because so many people, and I am equally guilty of this as everybody else, I think, who's ever been an entrepreneur has fallen into this trap before, that we focus too heavily, or we fall in love actually with the solutions that we want to create. And this is a huge trap.
Massive solution.
We're solution lovers.
That's what we all are.
Solution lovers. Yeah. And, you know, and there's a reason for this, because what we think about when we start to think about going into business, or when we start to think about entrepreneurial routes, when we start to think about products, is we think about that thing that we want to launch. We think about the money, we think about the customers that we might be able to get. We think about sales, we think about going for that product, and we fall in love with the thing that we can build. And all too often, and I've had this very scenario with Future Build when we very first started, where we fell in love with the thing that we wanted to build. We built it, and then we launched it out into the world. And of course, nobody wanted it. Nobody signed up. Nobody bought it. We didn't make any money from that very first product that we did, because we fell in love with a problem that we perceived people to have. But the actual reality was that they didn't have a real fundamental problem. So falling in love with the problem is way, way more important, and like so much more important than falling in love with the solution. Now, of course, everyone will make this mistake. I'll make it again, time and time again, I'm sure. But the thing that we need to be focusing on is identifying real pain points, real problems that people have, real friction, real difficulties that they need to overcome in order to make progress against what it is that they're looking to achieve. So we need to identify problems. Now, the best thing, and Nick, this is actually one of yours. I'm going to steal one of your comments that you give to me so often, which is your mind is there for, it's not there for storing ideas, right? You've got to get those ideas out of your mind as quickly as possible. Your mind is there for thinking of these ideas in the first place.
David Allen famously said, your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them.
There you go. Far better put than I tried. But this idea is really important, because this comes on to one of these tools that I think is so valuable for us, which is the most simple tool there is, which is list making. Okay. So Nick, again, often tells me, whenever I've got a problem, give me 10 solutions to it. Give me 10 ideas for that thing. Flex that creativity muscle and come up with, there we go. There's Arnie. You know, your creativity is like a muscle. It gets better the more and more you flex it. It gets bigger. Your ability to be creative gets more and more the more you flex it, the more ideas that you come up with. So coming up with as many ideas as you can is a really good way to make sure that you're ready when you really need something to happen. When you really need to kind of come up with a great idea, you're ready because you've been flexing this creativity muscle. Now, what I do is I have open lists that I constantly come back to, that I keep building upon. And sometimes it feels like these ideas aren't going anywhere. But what I find is that I naturally start to write the same ideas over time. And when I notice this pattern of writing the same ideas, the same problems that I'm seeing, the same difficulties that there are in the world, when I notice that pattern, that's when I know that there's something that I should do about it. And so I saw this with Future Builders. After the first incarnation that failed, I started to see this pattern and started to come up with lots and lots of different ideas. So this is one of my lists in those very early days, a list of 10 things of where we could do work as Future Builders. And remember, Future Builders has always had this vision of giving people free content, essentially, to help them grow and progress towards new careers, new jobs, and those kinds of things. So we were constantly writing all of these different ideas down, coming up with new lists of 10 things. And that's I think one of the most powerful things. Don't store those ideas in your head because you'll forget them. Write them down and then start to notice the patterns that keep recurring over a longer period of time. So I'm going to come back to some of these ideas when we talk a little bit about the testing phase as well, because this was the starting point of the testing.
Let's go back to this point as well about identifying problems. So what we're trying to, just to reiterate, we need to identify lots of problems and make lists of what the problems are. But then we also need to be constantly every day practicing and through repetition coming up with lots of ideas. So I like to come up with 10 ideas every day. Okay, and it doesn't matter what they're for, but it's just the practice of developing like creativity in that way is useful, because then when you need it, you've got it. So a question for you all in the chat box is, what is the problem that you want to solve? What is the problem, for example, that your customers have that you want to solve? I'd love to see your answers in the chat box. Yeah, let us know in the chat box. Let me know, Spencer, if you're seeing any in the chat box, because I can't see it.
Yeah, no problem. I've got my eye on it.
Cool. But yeah, let us know in the chat box, what problems are you trying to solve with your business idea?
I mean, we have got one from Todd, from Theo Todd, which sounds incredible. A war against plastic, coming up with, he's already got, it looks like a minimum viable product. So trying to gather feedback, which is fantastic. Sounds like you're doing the right things. Get your things out there as much as possible, because you really need to be testing your prototypes and your MVPs in order to gather feedback. It's frustrating when you're not getting feedback, but keep pushing at it. Keep going. One of the biggest reasons for failure is that people stop. Okay, so if you don't stop, if you keep testing, then that's the thing that you need to be focusing on.
Brilliant. Okay,
lots of things about sustainability, etc. as well. So that's a really a key one. And yeah, playing cricket all year round. I'm with you.
Nice. I like it. That could be a good one. That's a good problem to solve as well. How can you make
and whiskey as well. We've got a whiskey company in the making. So if you ever want testers for that one, I can give you my details about testing your whiskey.
Fantastic. So let's move on to the value proposition canvas. And as part of that, what I want you to do first of all, Spencer, because we talked about future builders, but I'd like you just to explain a little bit more about it, what it is.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to go back a step, if I can, Nick, because one of the really important parts of this puzzle, or this story of future builders and how it emerged and how it's continuing, is that when I wrote that list of 10 things that you saw a slide or two ago, we didn't know what to do with these ideas. We didn't know whether any of them were good. They were just a guess. They were just guesses about things that we saw as problems, and we needed some validation on this. So what I did was I saw this pattern of constantly playing out, which was that people want great content to learn from, but often they can't find it. It's a little bit like walking into a huge library and there's 10,000 books in this library, but you've never seen a book before and you've got no idea which book to go for. So you have this paradox of choice. You have this restriction because you just don't know where to go. And I saw that as being a problem. And I also saw that another problem was people were learning things, but they weren't being able to progress their learning onto the next stage because it was all fragmented and all over the place. And so I started to see this theme in my own, like focusing on my own pain points. And then I started to talk to users about it. And it wasn't until I spoke to, and I remember the person that I spoke to, who's in a podcast startup actually, and he said, well, it's basically like Spotify. It's playlists for learning. And I was like, boom, okay, wow. It totally is. It's 100% about playlists. That's the simplest way that I could start to convey what this idea was. And essentially what Future Builders is that we're building at the moment. And we've definitely had some troubles along the way, which I'm happy to talk to as well. But one of the things that we wanted to do was connect all of these disparate pieces of content from all over the web and be able to pull them together into one app that serves the user the right content at the right time. And we started to, if you want to just click on there we go. So we started to prototype this platform, this mobile first platform, and we started to emerge on this idea of smart playlists that make you grow in terms of your learning. There's a way to kind of connect a kind of a knowledge graph, if you like, all of this knowledge that's out there all over the web, connect it through one app, and then it knows what you're into, where you are on your journey, and what you should be going on to next. So that's what we were focusing on, and that's what Future Builders continues to be in some form, although it's definitely changing at the moment. So this playlists of learning, it only came, and I want to reiterate this point, that we had this hunch, I had this pain point myself, but it was only in those conversations with those very early customers where we even came up with a concept that resonated with people. And then we carried on to do further testing to make sure that it was going to resonate with more and more people all the time.
Let's talk a little bit about, because we did this exercise last year in 2019. And so this is a snapshot in time, but it's good to both understand going forward what you want to do. Like, I think all of you should be doing this exercise with your own businesses, but it's also a good exercise right now for us to understand what Future Builders' strategy was, or understanding was at that time. So there are, just to explain very quickly before we go into it, you've got on the right hand side is the customer profile, and on the left hand side is the value map. Essentially, it's the product and how it helps the customer solve their problems. Because Future Builders customers, the main pains they were having, difficulties, frustrations, were that they were wasting time on courses. Often the content wasn't relevant, and they were worried about losing their jobs in many cases. And so they wanted to feel prepared. They wanted to immediately find content, and they wanted to get to a point of career growth, right? And to be able to get from their pains to the gains, what they wanted to do, the jobs to be done, in other words, to use the terminology, was that they needed to find and recall good content, learn new skills, and also get ready for a new job. So that gives you a good understanding of what the customers were trying to do. And then what Spencer was trying to do, and again, I think it's moved on a long way since this time, but what the idea was it's learning playlists. And these introduce you to topics quickly and cheaply. And they also helps you just have just the most relevant info. So that helps you with relevant information not being relevant. And then it helps you improve skills so that you feel more confident and competent in your job. So you're less worried about losing it as well. So that really helps map over to what the pains were that they had. And then the features of the learning playlists that really helped, that we call them gain creators, to get the gains that customers wanted, the outcomes that they wanted, it was blogs and videos and podcasts, tailored content, and snackable content. So that helped people feel more prepared, immediately find their content because of the tailored content feed page, and snackable content helped them with their career growth. So we can see how it was trying to fit together like that. And this was a very quick exercise that we actually did together, and we recorded it as well. And I think this is on the Spen and Nick Show YouTube channel as well. This episode, which we can share a link to as well in the chat box, and we go through the whole process. But it literally should take you 20 or 30 minutes. But what you get, as you can see from what we just did, was you kind of have it all mapped out on one page. And if there's more, if you're one founder, it helps you get all of your ideas out of your head and onto paper, because your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. Hold them on paper, put it down, put it all on digitally like this, so you can get your ideas out, and then it's much easier to play with them and work out what you need to do next. Okay, so let's talk about the business model canvas as well, because the value proposition canvas really zooms into the customer and the product that you've got. But the business model canvas, which is the classic, if you're not familiar with it, I really recommend Business Model Generation as a book by Strategizer to check out. So there are 9 blocks. You've got your customers. Who's your customer? Then you've got, well, what's your value proposition? It can also be said that sometimes it's just the product. What is the thing that you're selling? Really, it's the value that it brings. Then you've got the channel, which is how do you get that product or service to your customer? The customer relationship is the description of it. Is it B2B? Is it B2C? Is it a long-term one? Is it short-term? Like with the channel as well, it could be through your website, could be through an app, could be through a physical store, it could be through your sales force. What's the channel that you're getting your product to your customer? Then you've got your revenue stream. Your revenue streams, like, is it freemium? Is it transactional revenue sales? Is it subscription? You know, what type of revenue stream is it? Then you've got, it could be free as well, like Facebook, free for the people using it, but then you've got ad spend. So different types of revenue streams. Key resources, what are the things that you need to be able to deliver your business? You know, what are the key things? Because we all need computers and stuff like that, but maybe you've got some intellectual property, and that's what enables you to run your business. Maybe you've got funding, and that enables you to do it, like run your business better than like maybe some of your competitors. You've got key activities. What are the things that you're doing that are key to you growing? Maybe marketing, for example, or it could be anything. And then you've got your key partners. So who's going to help you to grow your business? And then you've got the cost, the associated costs with all those things as well. So in this case, with Future Builders, the customer segment was people that are new in their career or looking for a new career, and to get to 1 billion people who need to upskill and reskill. And then the value proposition was smart playlists that help you grow. And the channels was through the app. That's how you'd access this. And then you've got a customer relationship, which was B2C. Okay. And then you've got the customer relationship you can also describe how you acquire customers as well. And that could be through paid social campaigns. And there was a lot of spend on that actually last year, right? And then you've got the revenue streams, which is freemium model. So it's free, but then you could like pay for extra features. And then you've got advertising revenue as well, which was the plan. And then you've got the key resources. What were the things that Spencer needed to be able to run it? Well, luckily it was venture backed, had funding from Nesta and from Founders Factory, and the web and mobile app that he created. So the key activities, app development, marketing, and the key partners, well, Nesta and Founders Factory with the investment. And then the cost structure, the people for the developers, and also the paid growth channels as well. So hopefully you can see on one page, we can look back. We are understanding the business now. Hopefully you all have a really good understanding of how the Future Builders business works, but also how, because we created this a year ago, what we wanted to do looking forward. Okay, so it's a very powerful tool for creating the new, but also reflecting on the old. And again, anything you want to add to this actually, Spencer?
No, I think that's covered really well. For the intention of this isn't necessarily a talk about future builders. It's a talk about how we use these tools, these canvases, in order to figure out what it was that we needed to do. And actually, looking back, it's really interesting that so many of these things really were hypotheses that we had, really. So these were best guesses about what we had based on a very limited set of data that we had at that time. And so our best guess was that a freemium model might work. Our best guess was that a revenue model might work, for example. And as it turns out that, you know, we weren't able to unleash some of those revenue models. We weren't able to make the kind of revenue that we were hoping for, partly because of timing, partly because we weren't able to get the app out into the world before COVID happened, etc. And I'm not blaming necessarily that for it, but timing was definitely a key. But it's really interesting to go back over this and see what some of those hypotheses turned out to be, because it's actually very rare that those hypotheses really do come true in the way that you hope. And we're going to talk a bit more about hypotheses, I think, and assumptions.
I think you've set us up very well. And what I'll just add is that you can, these are sticky notes on the screen that you're seeing. We can literally pick these off the screen. Well, not literally, but we'll take the concept and then apply them to the next a tool that we're going to use, which is assumption mapping. So imagine that you can literally pull these off and put them on the next tool. So we've created them, now we'll move them on to kind of put them in order of the things that we need to test to validate our assumptions. And yeah, I've created go on.
So just if you go back very quickly, Nick, just to talk about one thing, what's not on here, I'm sorry, yeah, one of the things we had was that a customer relationship might be a B2B model. We had set this up so that we could sell into companies, but we realized very early that that model wasn't going to work for the platform that we had. We tested it, we got signed up some businesses to pay for the app, but unfortunately the use of the app for the problems that they had just wasn't there. So that assumption just didn't ever work out, and that's one of the hypotheses that failed.
Good. And just as I was saying, that I've created a video on this on my own channel about the business model canvas. This is one of my favorite tools. I talk about it all the time. So I recommend you check that one out. And I do a lot of business model analyses because I think there's a lot that we can learn reflecting back on other businesses, that we don't make those mistakes. And we look at what's done well and see what we can apply. I've done another good video on Apple as well. I think it's a really good example. Okay, so let's talk about assumption mapping. You set it up, Spencer. Go on.
Perfect. So as we said, everything that we've done so far is really an assumption. And what we need to do is start to validate those assumptions. This is the thing. If some of you may be familiar with the Lean Startup book and some of those ideas about Lean Startup, build, measure, learn cycles, all of those kinds of things. And often the thing that people fail to do really effectively is to do the learning and measurement part. They build, and then they build again, and they build, and then they build again. And often it's the testing and the validation of those ideas that isn't always done really effectively. And the way that we can view this is as an assumption map, or we're mapping what our assumptions are. If you go into the next slide, we'll talk about how this actually works. Essentially, we've got this kind of, if you look at the bottom left diagram there, we've got this kind of 2x2 matrix. And on the horizontal axis, we've got known versus unknown. So every time we do something on the business model canvas, as you saw earlier, or on the value proposition canvas, or any other hunches that we have, we would plot them across this scale of known to unknown. What have we got evidence for, and what do we know nothing about at this stage? And that's what we would do across the horizontal axis. And on the vertical axis is very important. So important at the top and unimportant at the bottom. And what we're trying to do here is essentially prioritize all of the things that we don't know anything about and start to make sure that we do something about them in order to get the evidence that we need in order to prove out that the proposition or the idea that we've got is going to be successful. So by plotting these sticky notes onto a board, really simple, as you can see, this is the actual board that we did, one of the actual boards that we did on the top right hand corner. We've got lots above the line of importance, because of course you tend not to write things down if they're not important, so you would expect it to be above the line in terms of importance. But most of the things we had some indications about, we had some, and what actually this board here is after we had done some testing, we'd done some validation of some of these ideas because we'd spoken to customers or we'd observed them in their kind of learning environments or whatever. We had some data, but there were some things that we just didn't know anything about. We didn't have any evidence. They were completely unknown to us, but they were hugely important. These are the kind of things that if you don't get the evidence are the things that could make your business fail. If you're not really sure about it, you could fail, you could waste quite a lot of money. And we've recently seen in the press some huge failures of multi-billion-dollar companies that have failed very, very dramatically quite recently. And that would have been partly because they hadn't tested really effectively those ideas. And I truly believe that testing it gives you, it de-risks your ideas and it gives you some indication about where you should focus. So this assumption map, it's one of the most important tools, and Nick's favorite tools certainly are value proposition canvas and business model canvas. This is one of my favorite tools because because this is one of my favorites because it's the thing that where you visualize everything that you've got to do and you can tell what you have to do next and where you can prioritize. Quick aside on the priorities, did you realize that until very, very recently, the word prioritize or priority was only singular? There wasn't a plural version of the word priorities. You couldn't have priorities, multiple priorities. And that's because you should just be focusing on one thing. And when you're testing your ideas, I absolutely recommend you focus on one thing at a time. And don't just focus on it once. Focus on it multiple times. When you start to do tests, when you start to try to validate these ideas that you have, one successful test isn't always enough. Often it isn't actually enough to be able to really validate that this idea is going to truly work. So I know the David Bland, who wrote the book with Alex Osterwalder from Strategizer, when he was writing the book, Testing Business Ideas, he talks about testing one idea 1,000 times versus testing 1,000 ideas once. You're much better testing one idea 1,000 times, not because you're just flogging a dead horse, but because you're trying to gather as much data. I kind of go somewhere in between, which is to test multiple ideas individually, but test each one of those many, many times, because then it's only then that you really understand where you are and what you can do and what the potential success is. You don't want to waste money. You don't want to waste time, particularly when things are so chaotic and so disruptive as we're going through at this stage.
Quick question for everyone on the call and for anyone watching this afterwards is, what are some of the things that in your business idea that you don't know anything about? That's an interesting question, right? Something to think about. And also, what are those that are really important that you should be testing? So what are some of the assumptions that you should be testing in your business that you just don't know about? Think about it. Let us know in the chat box if you can. Okay, let's move on to testing business ideas, Spencer. Go on, keep going. You're on a roll.
Absolutely. I just saw a post, and I should draw people's attention to this, but if you are enjoying it, take a photo. Don't forget to use the hashtag ideas mean business with an exclamation mark. That's the one you should be doing. Make sure you use and at ideas mean business. Don't forget to do those things. Get it out there. More people need to be signing up to these workshops because I think they are absolutely invaluable, even if I do say so myself. I'm going to take a photo in just a minute.
Come on, let's get through this testing business ideas part. The testing.
Let's get through. So an example of testing one idea multiple times is exactly what we have here. This is, believe it or not, one of the earliest, what I would call prototypes for the Future Builders mobile app, the Future Builders platform. Now, I actually showed this to potential customers, would you believe? And I look at it now and I'm incredibly embarrassed by what this says, what it is. It doesn't say that much. It was just a very early idea. And I wanted to get some indication about whether people thought this might be worth carrying on for, worth spending time and money on. So this is the very first, what I'd call a napkin sketch. Get those ideas out. We've talked about making lists, but visually try to figure out what it could look like as well. And that's what paper prototyping and napkin sketches are so good at. This is this next level of detail that I actually went into. And this is, I would call this a paper prototype. I actually sketched out what I thought the app could look like. Of course, I used existing frameworks or existing apps to get inspiration from. So this is showing what a listening and experience would look like, a reading experience and a watching experience through the Future Builders app, what that would look like. What I actually did with this is took photos of each one of these and then used an app called Marvel app, to stitch these wireframes, these sketches together to show people what an experience could look like. So you can actually swipe on your phone, you can click buttons, and you can test whether that thing is any good. And again, I tested this with about, I think this was about 6 different users, just to see whether the early ideas of that user flow and that the app would actually work. Now, this went through a number of more iterations until we got to the next prototype, which is a high fidelity digital prototype. It looks incredibly confusing. It's actually very simple. It can be done with free software that exists. This is a piece of software called InVision Studio, but there are a number of different ways that you can do this, where you can actually kind of draw out each screen and then stitch them together or connect them together. All of these blue lines are the connections between each of those different screens. And when you play this, when you get your phone out and you click on play, then it actually feels like a real app. And this is a really great way to test whether, firstly, the app is any good and whether people get it and whether they can access and use it really easily. But it also tests that the usability and the journey that you want people to go through. Are they clicking in the right place? Are they going rabbit holes? Are they getting stuck? All of those kind of things are really, really important. And so there's a number of different ways that you can test ideas. This is just 3 different ways of prototyping, from a very low fidelity all the way through to a more high fidelity prototype. But I recommend doing many iterations of these over time. This one was great. We got so much insight from this that enabled us to actually use this as the design for the final app that we built.
Brilliant. So then, I think the next part, which is something we don't talk about enough, particularly in startups, which is planning, because it's about taking action, but I think we also need to organize ourselves and use tools like, I don't know if you use tools like Trello, let us know in the chat box. Do you use Trello? Do you use Notion? These types of things I think are so important, because I think I remember learning at school about smart planning. So I've got a question for you. What does the acronym SMART stand for? Can you let me know in the chat box? I'm sure you all know. If you type it in the chat box. Spencer, has anyone got it? What does the acronym SMART stand for with planning?
No one's got there yet, but people are talking about Notion being great, which is awesome. It's
Go on,
one
Spencer.
of my
You
favorite
love
tools
Notion,
as well.
don't you?
I love Notion. I pretty much do plan my whole life in Notion. Jinkai, I've probably got your name wrong, but Jinkai says specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely or time bound. Absolutely.
Yes, that's it. I think we
full
don't.
Marks.
I think it's old school, but I don't think we focus on this enough. And I think this is something that we need to try and bring into. So once we've decided what tests we need to run, I think we need to create a plan. And we need to say who's going to do it and who's going to do it by when and what is it exactly going to be. Now, it can change. The plan can change, right? But I think it's really important for us to organize our days and be specific in what we're doing. So I really recommend that you do that. You make lists and just tick them off and go along as you can. And at the end of the day, you might have to change for the next day. But I think this is an important part of it. So I wanted to include this as part of the step. But I want to stop sharing my screen for a moment just before we wrap up, because it looks like a very nice, simple, kind of straightforward, linear type thing. But in reality, it's not. I'm just going to share with you my iPad, because I'm going to show you something that I think is going to be quite helpful. Have we got it? 2 seconds while I just load it up.
Just while you're doing that, Nick, we have got quite a few people in the chat that have asking questions. So if we do get time, we will come to the Q&A. We're hoping to leave a good 10 minutes for the Q&A. So we'll come back to these questions in a few minutes.
I think we're doing well. I think it's just this point that I want to share. So what it looks like is that you've got an idea. Yeah, and then you want to go to a successful kind of business. Big office, probably an empty office now with everything that's going on in the world right now. But you want to go to, this is a £1 billion business, right? People think that the process is just a straight line, but in reality, it's actually spaghetti. Okay, and so it's the same thing with, if we take it back, if we just showed you one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We just showed you the steps which made it feel like that, but in reality, you're going to be moving like this in between all of them. So I just wanted to get that straight, and I hope that visualization helped it a little bit.
This visualization here, Nick, with the one with all of the scribbles all over. This
Exactly.
is basically my mind most of the time.
So I've shared that one. I'm just going to share my screen again quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. So we got time for questions. Okay. So that's pretty much it, actually. So I think for wrapping it up, I think it'd be good if we could tell everyone, definitely check out our YouTube channel, Spencer Ayres, subscribe. We're trying to get onto a mission to get to 1,000 subscribers at the moment. So it would really help us out if you could subscribe to our channels. And if you've got any questions or whatever, just connect with us on Instagram and LinkedIn. But we are going to do a Q&A now. So Spencer, what have we got?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting question from Hamza Hussain, who wants to create the cricket all year cricket centres. Assuming people will come to the cricket centre, I don't know how much people would be willing to pay, how often they might come, etc. So just a quick story that I'll start with, perhaps, Nick. One of the experiments we ran with Future Builders was, if you remember those 10 ideas that we had, we didn't know which idea to go with to start with. What myself and my colleagues at that point did was we built out 10 different landing pages. Now, landing pages, websites, pretty easy to build these days. You don't need to be a great developer. You don't need to be a coder. You can go on to Squarespace, or my favorite at the moment is Webflow, but also Wix. And there's a whole bunch of other ones which basically drag and drop website builders. And you could do it without really spending any money or very little money and test those different ideas. Now, we did that to start with, and we got down to 3 good ideas, but we still didn't know whether people were going to pay. So then we started to do our payment window test. Again, with each of these providers, each of these website services, you can actually put links to credit card companies, etc. So you can actually make payments. Now, what we did was we set up payments of £6 a month, £10 a month, £20 a month, £30 a month. We carried on going until people basically didn't put any credit card details in. And what we found was that the price of about £9 a month was something that people seemed to be willing to pay. And we actually got credit card numbers. In fact, we actually got credit card numbers, and we forgot to cancel those some of those early users. So we were actually charging people for about 4 months for using a service that didn't exist at that point.
Whoa.
Happily refunded and apologized. We actually turned those people to quite angry into actual big fans, because they realized that we were trying to do something, and we talked about why we were doing it that way. So I think test your price points, put a landing page out there, get it out there, put a price on it, and see whether people give you their email address to start with, or whether ideally, are they willing to part cash, real money, because that's the only way you really know whether your price points are going to be correct. There's lots of other ways you can test pricing, but you've got to be speaking to people, and you've got to be asking them what they would be willing to pay. There's no point in just having a hunch.
Brilliant. I'd agree with that completely. So the question was about the pricing part of the all year round cricket clubs.
Yeah, and it's a similar theme. There's other people saying, I don't know how much people are going to be paying. So you've got to be testing things. And if anything, just one second.
Oh, there we go. Got a book for that.
Got a book for that. This one here, we've talked about it already, but Testing Business Ideas is probably the best book that you could get for. It's got 44 different tests that you can be doing them. Some of them would involve price testing as well. So absolutely recommend that 100%.
Cool. I think that's a good answer. I wholeheartedly agree with it. And should we go with some other questions?
Absolutely. Why not? I did spot one. If you're
I've got one on screen now. I'm still not able to kind of go through it too easily, but it says, how do you feel about the recruitment agency business idea at the moment? Do you think it might work, or should I rather focus on something different? I think you've got to try it out. The key thing is to take action, see if, what is it that you're going to do different as well. And what I do is go through the process that we showed you today. Think about what's the problem that you're trying to solve. What is the problem that people have? And then how could you solve it? And how can you do that a little bit more differently than other people? Then why not, map out what the business model could look like very quickly, spend half an hour on your value proposition canvas, half an hour on your business model canvas, then think about, what are the big assumptions that you're making, because you'll be making a lot, and then kind of go, well, how can I test it? And that, I think a good way to do it is exactly as Spencer just said, set up a website, just a landing page very, very quickly, and just say, look, this is the type of thing I'm offering, and then see if you can get people to click on it. From at the moment, there are plenty of people that have not got jobs that are looking for jobs. But I think the biggest assumption that you're going to make with that is that companies are looking for recruiters. I would test that by probably the best way to test that up is call up companies and say, are you looking for staff? If they say yeah, then you can say, great, I've got a recruitment company that will help you. Are you interested? If they say yeah, you got a business. So I think it could work.
I think that's right. I agree. And I think you've got to think of the two sides of that marketplace, essentially, which is what it is, whether it's online or not. It's still two sides of a marketplace. You've got a demand and a supply side. You will have huge amounts. We're going through the biggest crisis health-wise, economy-wise, and also from a work perspective as well. There will be more people made redundant over the next few months and years than we've seen in a generation. And so the thing that you've got to be focusing on, I would be focusing on with a recruitment business, is where's the niche where people can get employed? What work are people needing in their businesses, and where can you supply that kind of talent towards? So I think it's absolutely valuable. It's a vital thing that people are going to need to be doing, but where is the demand for those individuals?
And I've seen a fantastic question from Frederick that I want to jump in on. Can I jump in on that one? I've got a lot, because my background is also in sales, Frederick. So I've worked in startup sales, and I was very successful for it. I've generated millions of pounds of revenue for startups, helping them grow, both as a salesperson but also advising. Is it okay to start a business, Frederick's asking, and not be at the front line of it, promoting it, because you are in active employment? How do you generate leads after doing all the marketing work online? So there's two questions there. I'll answer the first one. I believe personally that it's really hard for you to be successful in a startup if you as the founder are not fully driving sales. That sales is hard, okay? And I think also when you're running a startup, as the salesperson, as the founder, you're talking to customers, and every conversation you have actually shapes what the product could be going forward. If you're not doing that, you're not getting that information, someone else is, and it'll be coming to you through a filter. So I think it's so important in the early stages for you as the founder to be making those, to be doing the sales part. And I think, like, even if you have a full-time role, if you want it, if you're hungry enough, what are you doing after work? What are you doing before work? What time are you going to bed? What time are you waking up? Maybe you need to be waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be able to have more time, to be able to do the stuff that you need to do to be able to make it work. That's what I would suggest. I'd say you do need to be the salesperson if you can. You don't have to, like, maybe there's other ways around it. I just think that it's so vital in the beginning to be able to have those customer conversations. And so if you're not going to be able to grow it. And how do you generate leads after doing all the marketing and work online? So with the marketing work online, I think that's about making videos. I think that if you make videos and bring value to people in them, what I found and what Spencer's found is people contact you and they come to you. So it's actually quite easy, as long as you don't sell too much. You've just got to provide value, and then the leads come in. Go on, Spencer.
we've got a couple of minutes and I've got two questions I really want to answer. So I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. Humberto, hopefully I got your name right. This is a common question, which is about this conflict between protecting your idea and getting it out there and testing it. Now, Nick and I both have strong feelings about this, and we've had arguments with people around this before. We passionately believe that you've got to get your idea out there, and there's a good chance that lots of people have got your idea, have thought about this thing before, but they haven't done anything about it. They're not going to steal your idea unless they absolutely love it, unless they really want to do that. It's very unlikely that anybody's going to steal your idea unless it's some innovative technology that doesn't exist yet and you have to patent it. That's a completely different use case, or it's a completely different scenario. I would say you've got to get it out there and you've got to test it. There's some amazing essays about this. If you search Graham essays from Y Combinator, he's got some amazing essays all about why exactly you should do this. So I think my passionate focus is get it out there, get people to see it. It's very unlikely that anyone's going to steal it. The second question here is hiring people. When do you know it's right to hire people? Basically, it's quite simple. When there's no way that you can do what it is that you need to do, and you've validated your idea. When you know that you're reaching the point where it's product market fit, which we haven't really talked about that much, but essentially your product is flying off the shelves, the metaphoric shelves or whatever it is. When you've got stuff out there and it's working and customers are enjoying it and customers are paying money for it and there's too much work for you to do it, hire people. You kind of know, you will know when you need to hire because you physically can't do all the work that you need to be doing. They were the two questions. I believe we are at 3 o'clock. We can carry on. We could do this all day long, but I'm sure other people have many other things they would much rather be doing than listening to us waffle on.
I am going to cut it short there. Thank you so much, Spencer and Nick. And I just want to say that hopefully for all the viewers out there, that today's sessions helped inspire you to identify what other steps you can take to move your business idea forwards. I mean, Spencer and Nick pretty much give you absolute tons of things that you can think about, that you can do, that you can develop to move things forward. I also want to thank everyone who's joined us online today. Our next Ideas Mean Business webinar is taking place on the 25th of November, where Claudine Edemai, and I'm not entirely sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, will be explaining the legalities of running a small business. We hope that you can join us then. If you'd like to keep up to date with the Young Innovators news and events, please do sign up to our newsletter, follow us on Instagram, visit our program page, or join our LinkedIn group. Once again, I'd like to express a massive thank you to Nick and Spencer for hosting today's wonderful session, and for everybody for joining us. We hope to see you next time. Thank you all. Bye.
See you later.
Thank you.